Welcome back to the Let's Pivot podcast, the show for founders and coaches who want growth without the guesswork. Today, I'm joined by Laurie Brewer, a startup consultant, COO, and leadership coach who helps founders scale smart, fast, and fundable. Author of the soon-to-be best-selling book, Smart Girls Say the F Word.
Love
So,
that.
how are you doing today, Laurie?
I'm good. Good. Honestly, ready for 2025 to be over because I feel like 2026 I'm just ready.
I'm kind of with you. I'm ready to sleep the rest of this one off and
Yes,
let's
yes.
get going on 2026. This is going to be my year for sure. It's time.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, Lori, you've done a lot of interesting and exciting things over the last couple of years. What happened? Why did you decide to be an entrepreneur? Why did you decide to tell us a little bit about your story? Why did you take on the extra headache and hassle?
That's a great question. Sometimes you ever ask yourself if I knew then what I know now, would I still do the same thing? I would. I would do things a little bit differently, but I would still do the same thing. I was in corporate for a really long time, banking and tech, financial services, and it just wasn't what I loved doing. Um, and towards the end of my corporate career, I was exposed as a coach to startup companies, and I realized that that was where I was really energized. So it's such an innovative space, regardless of the industry that people are in, whether it's AI or crypto or tech or fintech, whatever it is, e-commerce. It's fun and it's new and everybody has the same level of energy. And you don't have that in corporate, at least I didn't. And so I think the more that I was involved with startups, the more that I really wanted to engage in that space. And so it was time. And I do not regret that choice at all. Not at all.
Okay. And how has that journey been from starting to where you are now? Have you had any have you had any
It's exhausting. You know, when you're in this space, you just assume that clients are just going to find you because you're just so amazing that they can't wait to come and get you, right? And you quickly realize that's not how it works. That you have to seek out clients. It's tough. I think that was the most difficult part, right? Is creating a name for yourself, creating a reputation, finding your niche, right? Like, where am I really good? Where do I really belong? What am I good at? What can I do okay that I can blend with the stuff I do great? I think that was a challenge. I think creating my ideal customer profile, that's always a challenge. I think it evolves as you grow as an entrepreneur. And I think you have to be vigilant about making sure that you're consistent with that, consistent with your brand. Where big challenge is pricing. And I'll be honest, I think sometimes it's very different for women. We price lower. And I say this all the time, people get annoyed with me, but I think men are conditioned to compete and women are conditioned to compare. And that creates a disconnect. So, I always tell women or when I'm coaching them, don't, if you feel uncomfortable saying your price, you're close. You're really close. So I think those were just some of the biggest challenges. I also think just trying to manage all of it, right? Because in the beginning, I was on my own and, trying to keep up with lead generation and CRMs and websites and financials and all of these moving parts. You're just like, did I do the right thing? What am I doing to myself? So finding ways to automate those things and just getting to a place where I could hire somebody offshore to do some of the things that I needed to get done, bringing in partners in some of the businesses that I'm in. I think that's really when I started to get my rhythm.
Okay. And what automations are you doing right now? How are those working out for you?
Good. I use Zapier to do a lot of lead gen automation, manage my CRM, I think like the rest of the world. I use AI, I use ChatGPT, I use some other lesser known tools, like just to make sure that when I'm creating content, that I'm humanizing the content, that it's not, I don't know about you, but I have read content and I'm like, they didn't write that. Right? Like that's not their brand. What I love about AI is the more you train it to know your tone, the better the output becomes. When I wrote the book, I I would write chapters and I hated them. And so then I'd run them through ChatGPT and be like, okay, help me with this. Like, what am I missing? Am I not saying this the right way? Like, this isn't landing right. And so I feel like there are people that are afraid to use AI. There are some people that overuse AI and different tools. And I think there's this happy medium. And the
Okay.
tools keep getting better, right? Like,
The tools definitely keep getting better.
keep getting better. I'm like, wow, what is this? It's funny. I just started using this app called Zeely to do marketing.
Hmm.
And I'm doing a small test with it. And so it's been interesting. Everyone's like, oh, you can't trust AI to run marketing. I'm like, well, I can't trust myself to run marketing. So I need to trust someone. And so I feel like if you use it properly, I almost feel like AI becomes like a chief of staff.
Right.
That's how I see AI, and I see the evolution of it. So every time I see a new tool, I'm like, let me check it out. Let me see what I think. Some are right, some aren't right for me. But I feel like the days of trying to do it all on your own and doing it manually, that just doesn't exist anymore. And if it does exist, you really probably should find somebody to coach you.
Because you only have so much time, and that
Right.
time needs to be spent on the 20% of things that move the business 80%, not the 80% of things that drag you down.
Percent. And I think when I worked in corporate, I worked 60, 70 hours a week. And when I first started the consulting business, I was working 70 plus hours a week. But now I'm to a place where time is a commodity we don't get back.
Hmm.
And I want to build new things. I want to enjoy my life. I want to do all of the things that are really important to me. And I cannot do that if I'm not working smarter.
Right. Right. So let me ask you this. You're in the coaching space, you deal with a lot of business owners, executives. They can be, I don't want to call them hard-headed, but, kind of stubborn or set in their ways. How difficult is it convincing them to make those changes that are necessary, or adjusting their thought process, their life?
That's a good question too. So a year ago, more difficult. Now, the evolution in the past 12 months has been really interesting to me. So I had the folks that were clients that hardcore, no, we're not using AI. We're not jumping on the AI bandwagon, right?
Mhm.
People get nervous. It'll take our jobs. Automate a different way. Okay, fine. We'll look at automation in a different way. And so I started to slowly, in pockets, to those types of clients, integrate tools without representing them as AI to start. So I said, here's what I would recommend we do. Here's how I think that we will automate this process or this department. And after they saw how it worked, I'd say, just so you know, this is an AI driven tool.
Right.
Surprised. And they're like, oh, I don't think so. No, it is. It
And
is an AI driven tool.
have you been able to show pretty good ROI with those types of tools? And
Yeah, I mean, when you start to think about the disparate systems that exist, especially now, I'm going to speak not to startup, but I'm going to speak to scaling companies who, have 150 plus employees. And they've grown fast. So they went through a hyper growth phase or whatever that looks like. They have all these disparate systems, right? They're all over the place. Nobody's communicating. Collaboration is, they think, fantastic. It's really not. Pockets of people doing things one way and you pockets of people doing things another way.
Mhm.
Um, I think when you start to think about it from that perspective is when you really start to see the ROI, right? Because I don't think people understand the impact to their customers, to their people, to their output, to their speed to market, all of those things when they have disparate systems and everybody is doing things inconsistently. So when you start to show them what that automation looks like, and then you start to quantify for them the impact of that to some of those channels I just mentioned, that's when you really start to see a buy-in from those hardcore naysayers. We're
Mhm.
never using it, right? We're not doing it. And now, I mean, I position it a little bit differently, which is if you don't use it, you're going to get left behind.
Right.
You
Right.
really are going to be left behind. And so I think that makes a big difference. I have seen return on investment, upwards of even just, let's just talk about pure revenue. I have seen revenue increase 30+% by automating processes, automating out of sales leads, automating processes that are inbound, which can be outbound.
Right.
And I think when those folks, the CEOs and the executives, start to see things like that, that's when they're like, okay, right? Now they're like, how do I hire an AI developer to do this for me?
Right.
Well, you could do that, but there's so many great off-the-shelf tools. You do need somebody as a software engineer, an AI developer, somebody that can configure the tools, right? Somebody that can
Customize them a little bit.
customize them for you. So you do need to hire someone, but you don't want to hire an entire team. You're not big enough, or even if they are big enough, really look at the off-the-shelf tools, because there are people out there that are doing this and they're doing it so much more quickly than you'll ever be able to do it. So I think the days of in-house development, specifically around AI, have this, we're kind of in this transitional period, right? Things are moving at the speed of light. And by the time you hire people, get them onboarded, figure out forget it, go buy something, configure it for your unique needs, and move on. So, I mean, I can see large scale enterprises having in-house developers, but in my industry, in the startup space, I don't see that as much. Unless they're an AI driven company, which some of the ones that I consult are.
Right. Right. And so let me ask you about your book, Smart Girls Say the F Word. What led you what led you to writing that? And I love the title, by the way.
The title is thanks to my mother, who is no longer with us, but she is the reason I titled the book that. I was really trying to come up with something fun and catchy. The F word for the book is funding, but the story behind that was not the funding word. And that's what happens when your mother catches you saying a word you're not supposed to say and wants to try and help you understand why you should never use that word. And her exact words were, Laurie, smart girls don't say words like that. Well, I say it and I'm smart. So smart girls do say that. And she's like, well, I can't argue with that. But as I started to get into startup, I realized that, especially as I started to do pitch decks and support funding for pre-seed and beyond, it was much more challenging for female founders to get funding. Like 8% of female companies were getting at the time, and this was 2 years ago.
Why
I'm
is
sorry.
that?
I think
In
there's
your
some,
opinion, of course.
in my opinion, this is strictly my opinion, and I did do a lot of research on it, but I think it's the investors, right? The investors are less likely to take risks with women than they are with men. That's just goes back to, historically women are conditioned to compare to others, and men are conditioned to compete. And so when you get a male founded company in front of a group of venture capitalists, they tend to already feel more secure than when they see a group of women come in. What I love about the evolution in this space is that you are starting to see female founded venture capital companies. They are not that they are not investing in men, they absolutely are. I mean, that would make no sense, but they are hearing from women more. Women are getting in front of them. I mean, it's hard to even secure a spot for a fully female founded company to get in front of a group of venture capitalists to even get the interest that they need. I think a lot of that is too, not just on the investors, but on the women, right? We are less likely to feel confident and comfortable believing that we belong at that table.
What's the solution, the long-term solution to help women entrepreneurs, startups, right? Because their ideas are just as good. They work just as
Absolutely.
hard or harder sometimes. So,
I think teaching women to tell the story, right? I think women have to start to overcome a little bit of the imposter syndrome, right? That we all feel. I mean, everybody's guilty of it. At least I've been guilty of it in the past, and still it will slip in and out in my life. So I think coaching women to understand, one, how to tell their story in a way that they're confident and comfortable, know their financials, right? So I can't even tell you how many times I've went into investor meetings with men who couldn't explain their financials and they still got the money. If a woman would go in front of that same group of investors and not be comfortable, not know their financials, they would have been far less likely to walk out the door with a commitment, right? So those letter of intents go more so in a different direction. I'm not saying that with all investors. I've met different groups of investors, and some are very different. Women have to be beyond prepared for those meetings, right? Their pitch deck has to be solid, their story has to be solid, their financials are solid, and they know them inside and out. They need to feel comfortable about what is the problem that they're solving, right? How does their product, their service, whatever that is, solve a problem? Link that product, that problem solution, right, to the total accessible market. Start thinking about what is the impact of that? How am I going to generate revenue? How quickly am I going to generate revenue? How are they going to get their return on investment? I think they have to button that up much, much tighter. And so teaching women how to do that, teaching women how to walk into a room with confidence. I also tell them, you're going to fail. You can fail. Just fail fast, learn, recover. Don't let the failure of not receiving funding from a group of investors, whether it's angel investors or private equity or VCs, whatever that looks like, don't let that stop you. And a lot of women fail once and say, that's it, this isn't meant for me. So just helping them to get beyond some of the, I think, limiting beliefs that hold us back. Certainly there's opportunity there, but really it's telling their story in a way that is compelling, but also telling this story in a way that helps the investors know exactly how they're getting their money back. Because at the end of the day, that's all they care about. And how fast are they going to get it?
How fast and how much more on top of
That's
that?
right. How fast, how much more, and then how quick can you scale, right? So one of the questions that always surfaces in those meetings is, okay, so this is your 18-month target. We get it. What happens after 18 months? I have literally watched groups of people stall. They don't know. They don't know what it looks like beyond it. How do they scale? What do they do? What is that next level? What is the next product evolution? I think understanding that is really important, right? And avoiding pitfalls. So there's so many pitfalls in startup. You get that money and everybody's like, wow, we just got $5 million. And all of a sudden they start spending. I'm like, hold on.
It's not Christmas time.
No, hold on. We're not all buying yachts and moving to Miami. Like, that's not happening. We're not doing those types of things. Like, we need to be smart. And that is where I think women excel. That's where it gets very different. And women understand that. They understand that it's not about, it isn't Christmas, right? It's 5 million or 2 million or 1 million, whatever that number is. They know exactly what they're going to do with it. They know what the use of funds looks like, and they know what they're going to scale. The problem is they don't always explain it clearly. So I think helping them explain that becomes really relevant.
Well, it goes back to your storytelling.
Yeah, 100%. I think women are better at telling stories. And I tell them this all the time. And I always say, listen, pretend that you're at girls' night, right? And you've had 1 or 2 glasses of wine, you feel totally relaxed, you're with your group of friends. When you go into these like, you need to be confident but comfortable in sharing this story and just be concise. So they hate this, but whenever I coach people on pitch decks, I turn my back to them.
Oh,
And they're like, why do you do that? And I'm like, because I don't want you to see my facial expressions. I want you to not know how I'm reacting, because I think investors are extremely stoic. They sit stoically, they're quiet, you don't know what they're thinking, and that's part of their strategy, it's part of their game. And so when I coach anyone, doesn't matter men or women, as soon as I sit down, I flip my chair around and they're like, what are you doing? I'm
like playing poker.
right? I don't want you to look at me.
Glasses.
Right. I want you to not know how I'm responding to this. And I want you to keep going. I want you to keep telling the story. And they're like, are you going to make notes? I'm like, yes, mental notes. I'm not going to make notes, because if I make notes, you're going to know that there's feedback in there, and you're going to lose your flow. It's going to do this. So yeah, that's one of the things people are like, I hate when you do that. I'm like, I'm sorry, but when you sit in front of investors, they're going to be so stoic, you're not going to know what they're thinking. And since I don't have the best poker face, which is why I don't play poker, I turn my back and I'm like, I just want you to imagine you have absolutely no idea how I'm reacting to this, and just keep going, keep going. So it takes them a couple of times to adjust to the fact that I'm doing that, but then now they expect it. And when I walk into a room to coach somebody, they have my seat backwards.
And let me ask you this. I thought of it a little bit earlier. How long do you recommend that startups plan out? Do you recommend they plan 18 months or 3 years or 5 years? What's an appropriate?
That's a great question. So the first thing I always tell them is for that particular round of funding that you are going after, I want you to plan out for that, and I want a financial structure that aligns to what's the return on investment look like for that. What is your market accessibility, right? What are we using the funds for? How much runway are you getting? But then I want you to look. I never go beyond 3 years, especially in startup, the tech world, AI. The world changes like this every single day. I always tell them, I'm like, we're going to go for this funding round. What are we doing with the money? And what is that? And then we will feed directly into, as you're generating that revenue, how are we reinvesting that money? And what does that look like over the next 3 years? So I don't go out beyond 3 years. And you really should. Because I just feel, I feel like financial planning beyond that is just irresponsible, and it's going to change. So if I'm an investor, I'm looking at that going, sure, that sounds good. But 5 years out, really, you know what the world's going to look like? Because we don't.
We sure couldn't have imagined from 2020 to today, huh?
No. Well, I mean, even like Chuck, even if we talk about a year ago with AI to where we are today with AI, I mean, 12 months in from last year at this time, when I think about what I was doing with AI versus how I had to sell it, how I had to position it, how I had to recommend it. And now my level of confidence with integrating AI tools into a space and offering consulting advice and implementing those tools, it's night and day.
Right.
So no, 3 years, and 3 years is pushing it for the record. I think 24 to 36 months, like max.
Okay.
The goal is always to not have to go back for more funding. And I always tell startups that, like, some of you will, but if you could generate revenue, return the investment to your investors, right? Stop giving away equity in your company. Every time you go out for more money, you lose more equity. You lose more ownership of your company. So if your goal is an exit strategy, let's try and figure out how we get to that exit, and you sell your company to someone much bigger and let them deal with it.
Right. Right. So let me ask you then, what are the plans for 2026? Where are we going?
Well, I'm finishing my second book. That's going to come out in 2026. I know that for sure. And I'm getting ready to launch something called Smart Girl Society. Is a community for female founders, leaders, women at various stages in their career that really are looking for a way kind of align themselves with what they want to accomplish, and to have a community or a squad, as I like to refer to it. That's just, I think, the old cheerleader in me, but you need a community or a squad of women that are elevating, inspiring, empowering, and are there to kind of remind you who you are when you forget who. And I think that's what Smart Girl Society is about. It's also coaching. It's also monthly themed competitions, right? I think healthy competition is good. I think we need to start to condition ourselves to compete. Stop comparing. Let's compete. Let's get in there and let's just, build your own table. Stop asking somebody for a seat at theirs. So I think that's a lot of. I'm in the middle of working with a company. One of the most impressive people I've ever met. He's so young, 21, but he founded a company called Learnicity, and he won his first pitch competition at 17 years old. Andrew Keller, wonderful person. He is building the app for Smart Girl Society, and so I've been working with him on that to launch that. So that's first quarter. I'm going to keep consulting because I love it. I'm also a co-founder and COO in a company called Swag, and so we just launched a partnership with GDNA to build our AI concierge Swaggy, which is kind of cool. And so that's just really how I'm going into 2026.
Awesome. That's amazing. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast and talk with us. You have
I
an
appreciate it.
amazing story, and I'm so glad to have heard it.
No, it was wonderful. It's great to get this opportunity, so I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Miss Laurie Brewer. Have an amazing new year.
You too. Happy New Year.